St. Paul did not spend much of his letter writing time describing his own mystical experiences. And in the common Christian imagination, he's rarely categorized with the great mystics of church history. But today's first reading invites us into a very intimate place in his prayer, even beyond his encounter with the risen Christ on the road to Damascus. In careful third-person description, Paul helps his readers appreciate the ground of his faith experience. Paul simply calls himself a man he knows. About this man, Paul will boast, but only in the first person. Paul will only tell us about his weaknesses and his sins. In both cases, he's really not ascribing any credit to himself, but only to God in Jesus. When Paul is less than perfect, or even when he sins through his weakened human choices, Christ's grace redeems him, and Paul will boast of this redemptive grace. When Paul encounters Jesus in prayer and discovers the mystery of God hidden for generations and now revealed, Paul gives all credit to Jesus for the revelation and not to any merit of his own. But Paul does want the reader to know that he is a credible witness of Jesus Christ, one to be taken seriously, because he knows Jesus through his mercy and through his generous inner revelation. He is sharing in both cases what can only be described as mystical experience to give his readers a sense of his qualifications for being an apostle, a trustworthy witness of Jesus and his work of proclaiming the reign of God. Unlike the disciples and apostles who actually accompanied Jesus in his human life and mission, Paul knows Jesus in his because he has been privileged to share in the mind of the risen Christ, and he challenges all of us to share his experience. If Paul is a credible witness, and the church has certainly thought so down through the ages, then we can be, if we are willing to make ourselves available as Paul has done, by prayer, apostolic work, suffering, and endurance of the various thorns of the side that we have to endure on behalf of the work of the kingdom. Paul's thorn in the flesh is rather equivalent to the expressions of pain in the neck that often apply to those we don't work easily with. But the salvific pain in the neck is not just anyone we don't like to see coming into the office first thing on a Monday full of complaints. Rather, it's a pain in the neck within our work on behalf of Christ. When we are doing the loving thing, when we are teaching or preaching or nursing or cleaning out files for the sake of the promotion of God's reign, then those who serve as pains to us are graces to make us stronger. Because in the weakness we feel from their intrusion into our lives, God's grace is made both necessary and welcome. All of us have such pains. Occasionally they are other people. Sometimes they are rules and regulations. Sometimes they're aspects of our work that we find tedious, time-consuming, and draining. But they are part of our mission, and endured graciously, they bring about our perfection, which we can't boast about, because the fact that we consider them pains is already a sign of our weakness and incompetence. In the gospel passage today, we discover with joy that we can fully trust God's grace to care for us, as long as seeking God's reign is our highest priority. When I fail, God makes up the difference. And unworthy as I might be, God has chosen me for this service and companionship. I don't fear what I have to wear, or wonder if there will be enough of any resource to do whatever it is that will serve the greater glory of God, because God has already made it so. Amen.